This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 112.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's going on, SE Nation? Welcome back to this podcast. My name is Ramsey Majaba. In case you didn't know that, I am the host of We the Sales Engineers. Usually, across from me over the webcam, Benny Kanungo is my co-host, but he got pulled into a late meeting fairly late, so he is not with me today, but I do have I guess today. His name is Matt Wright. He's a sales engineer out of Ottawa, Toronto. He's a kinsman. He's a countryman of mine, and it was a fun conversation about just being a sales engineer who supports many account managers. So, and you know, that comes with its own sets of let's just say challenges that we need to overcome, we need to maneuver. And that's pretty much what we discussed, Matt and I, today, and how as a sales engineer supporting so many people in a software-based company, how to avoid being a DJ, a demo jockey, or how to anchor a sales team that's just trying to do so much with so little resources in terms of sales engineering. It was a fun conversation. He's also going to talk about SE Toronto, which is a new community that himself and two other SEs are starting together. So check out the podcast. I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you after. What's going on, Matt? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the show. Who are you and why are you here?
Sure. My name is Matt Wright. I'm a sales engineer at Lever.
Okay. So that's why you're here, because you're a sales engineer at Lever.
That's right.
I don't know what Lever is, but it sounds like a great company.
Sure. So Lever is an applicant tracking system. So we help organizations basically throughout the recruitment process.
Okay.
Here today as well to talk about SEs of Toronto, which is a group that I co-founded just earlier in this whole COVID breakout.
All right. We'll get to SE Tour really soon.
Sounds good.
So how long have you been in SE? How did you get to become an SE? Can you tell me any of that?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been an SE now for about 5 years. I actually really stumbled into the technology space attending a conference, and I was reached out to by a group that was trying to sell and pilot into a new vertical within the space of their organization. I didn't know that what I was doing at first was actually being an SE. It was really more of a subject matter expert position. But then as I started to do demonstrations and proof of concepts, you kind of get the label of SE, and that's really kind of how it all started.
Okay. So what were you doing before you were an SE?
Sure. So before being an SE, I was actually on a track to do a PhD. So I was out west pursuing a master's, and thought that I was going to take the professorship route when kind of the allure of technology and technology sales presented itself. And from that, really I had to kind of bootstrap everything that I knew about software as a service, technology. I was fortunate enough to join an organization that was really small scale startup at the time. And it was great just to learn and to pivot and to see all the different skills that would be required basically to be in technology sales. So.
Okay. I just popped on LinkedIn. I'm looking at your profile.
Mm-hmm.
You studied civil engineering or what did you study?
I did. My original degree was in chemical engineering. I did a really quick bachelor's in economics, and I was really interested in sustainability and engineering education. And so that master's in civil engineering allowed me to kind of, be taken under the wings of some professors who were, really passionate about changing the way that engineers were being taught. And so the organization that I joined, Vena Solutions, they were looking to sell into the higher education vertical. They had some great early adopter customers, and that's actually kind of how I naturally fed into that process.
Okay. So because you came from university, you were studying to become a professor, you had insight into the customers that Vena wants to sell into.
Exactly.
Yeah. A lot of SEs kind of do that, even if they don't have experience being SEs or in software. But if you know the customer well enough, you know what they need. you'll be able to actually show the product very well. So, all right.
Exactly.
So that was around, you became an SE around 5 years ago. There's an interesting note that I took when we talked last time. What sales engineers are not. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
So what aren't sales engineers?
Yeah. So very interesting point. And, I talk at length, with other folks in the industry, just about what SEs are not. There's the term demo jockey, right? Where you're really just, a horse and pony show, and you're taking a customer through a bunch of slides or clicking around on a product. Very much so not what SEs are all about. I think that coming from the background that I had, being that trusted advisor and that subject matter expert, makes you a little bit more in tune with customer pain and customer requirements, because you're genuinely interested in the problem you're trying to solve, versus just taking someone through, a flat screen of all your product offering. And so really at the core, what SEs are not is someone who can click through different buttons and different modules in a technology. It's really about connecting with that customer and ultimately, trying to solve a challenge that they're faced with.
Yeah, if the SE is limited to just clicking buttons and all that, we could easily just pre-record a demo and tell the customer to watch that instead of solving a problem, right?
Exactly. It's a little too linear for me.
Yeah. All right. So is there anything else you can think of that we aren't?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a laundry list of things that we aren't. We're definitely not, a fill-in AE, where some folks view an account executive as just, an order taker. I definitely think that sales engineers sometimes, get this rap that we're not motivated by sales or trying to close business. But most definitely, SEs are also not developers. Right. In most cases, it's not necessarily your role to be, a product designer and to, take a customer's requirements and try and build something entirely custom. Although that is, the case in some organizations.
Yeah.
So most certainly the way that I view SEs is as that delicate balance between, a product expert, a little bit of sales, sometimes even being customer success, but most certainly not too far leaned into any of those categories.
Okay, and for those who don't know what customer success is, do you mind just briefly going over that?
Sure. So customer success being any individual who might be known as like an account manager, but who doesn't necessarily have a variable component as the main driver of their on-target earnings. So someone who's responsible for getting customers experienced in a platform or adopting a technology, nurturing them through that adoption phase, and then ultimately making sure that they're successful with that tool.
So that usually happens after the sale. Like there's an account,
Post-sale.
the sales team that sells the product, and then the customer success team just makes sure that the customer uses it fairly successfully, as you say, customer success. And
Exactly.
I think that's happened more with the software as a service, with the since it's subscription model. I guess people need more and more people buying every month.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a retention, right? It's not so much about just landing new business. It's ensuring that those customers renew.
It's funny because in my business, we don't have customer success. It's the pre-sales team who also makes sure that the customer is happy. Maybe they're not doing the actual work where they go in and configure stuff for the customer, but they have to make sure that whoever's responsible for that does it.
Yeah, exactly.
So not everybody has customer success. My company doesn't. My former company doesn't. The former company before that doesn't. I'm in networking, in case you're wondering. All right.
So it definitely sounds like you have the unique position then that you get to see customers before they buy, and then obviously supporting them after.
Oh yeah, a lot of people in my industry are like that because I have 6 accounts. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
My job is not to go find new accounts. Even if my company finds new accounts, I'm not supposed to touch them because I have 6 accounts. Right. So if those 6 accounts don't keep buying from me, I'm not going to hit my quota.
Yep.
So my job is to make sure that they're happy so that they continue to buy from me. All right. So we talked about what SEs are not. In your mind, what are SEs? How would you define? If someone walks up to you in a cocktail party, I don't know if you do cocktail parties, definitely not right now. How would you define what you do to them?
Yeah, so the best way to describe it, is really as a technical sales resource that supports a sales team through evaluations, through security and compliance, through taking a customer's, technical or otherwise, just business requirements, and translating that into something that makes sense in terms of the product or the suite of offering the your organization provides. So to make a long story short, we combine the engineering or the product side with the sales world, basically.
Okay. Yeah, that seems fairly simple. Eh, yeah. And I don't know if you want to answer this question. What's the number of SEs in your organization? Is it 1 to 10, 10 to 50? Like,
Yeah.
where do you range?
So within the ratios, it almost scales depending on the complexity of the cohort. So obviously for more enterprise size cohorts, you're going to have maybe a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio of SE to account executive,
Okay.
whereas in more of the smaller business mid-market segments, you could have anywhere from 10 to 15 sellers per SE.
Jeez.
So a lot of support there.
Yeah. Does that person sleep? Are you part of that team or?
I support that team, correct?
Holy, do you sleep? You look like you've
I
slept.
try. Yeah.
Okay. Not right now. You don't look like you're sleeping right now. You look like you've slept. You look energized.
I feel energized every day.
That's so how is I've been one to one mostly with my account managers. Do you go out before the whole corona thing? Did you go out and visit customers? Was it all on the phone?
Yeah, great question. So, in previous roles, I was definitely a little bit more of a road warrior, where I was out visiting customers. In today's climate, obviously everything's being done remote. But most of our sales, involve engagements where they're video conference or phone call. You lose a little bit of that personal element because you're not actually
Yeah.
face to face with someone. But in previous roles, I was definitely customer facing and on the road a lot more.
Okay. And my experience with people who support 10 salespeople in one time, um, you end up being a demo jockey because you don't have time to do anything else. How do you manage not getting pigeonholed into that?
Yeah, so I think it's about, kind of setting the right stage with your team, in that you don't always want to be performing Harbor Cruise demos. You're not just going to be giving the same boilerplate, show and tell show. What you can really, do is start to craft the message around the value prop of the organization. You're doing kind of ongoing, constant discovery, and never really committing to a standard demo flow, always being flexible to deviate and to let the customers tell you what their biggest problems are so that you can solve those with the tool that you're selling.
Do you get the chance? The reason I'm asking is a common complaint is when you're covering that many people, you always come in like last second and they always call you in for a demo, which seems that you're using it as also a kind of a discovery phase at the same time. But how do you manage to, while discovering what the customer issues are, modify your demo on the fly to fix their issue or
Yeah.
to customize it to that customer?
Yeah, I think that if you are having a dialogue and not just presenting to a blank screen, it really helps to make it more of a conversation, where I might want to start a demo in the same place every time because that's where I feel comfortable, but allowing either the customer or the prospect to choose from a menu of things that they want to see. Um, Usually I'll go through and I'll do my due diligence to look through the CRM and make sure that I understand what the customer said on a discovery call or a qualification call. So always making sure that I'm prepared for those meetings, so that I'm not forcing myself into getting into this generic or default mode. I like to really personalize it, on a per customer basis. Even if I only have 5-10 minutes before a demo, I'll do anything I can to personalize it for that customer.
Okay. And I'm assuming since you're working with 10 salespeople at the same time, they're all looking to sell, 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 sell all the time. How do you make sure that it's not getting out of hand, that the leads are actually qualified? How do you anchor that team, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's having that open communication, and that's really, one of the tenets I think of being an SE, is having that good discourse with your sellers, making sure that you're part of the team and that everyone understands the role that they play. There's certain personalities who, might never want to touch the product. They want to take customers through their deck and then sit on mute until it comes up, how much does this thing cost?
Yeah.
Whereas other sellers, want to be engaged. They want to ask probing questions. They want to be involved in discovery. So really the SE has this unique opportunity to be that product expert and then to play the role that's required based on that relationship with the seller.
Okay. What do you prefer? Do you like some SEs prefer a probing account manager? Some SEs prefer that the manager steps out of the way so they can do their job, because that's my job. How do you let the account manager know your preference, and how do they let you know their preference and not butt heads over it?
I like to leave space in any presentation. I think that there's a very positive, silent or white space in any presentation where if you can allow a 2 to 3 second comfortable silence to hang, that'll then give the opportunity for a customer to ask a question if they don't want to be rude and interrupt. But also it allows an account executive to jump in if they have something else to add, or if they maybe have picked up on a nonverbal cue from the group. So typically when I get to the end of a workflow, or if I get into a situation where I know that that particular seller really has this great story that they like to tell, they have some social proof, I'm going to leave space for them to jump in so that it feels natural and it doesn't feel forced.
Okay. Do you let them know ahead of time that you're going to let them jump in, or do they just jump in and you figure it out?
Yeah, that's I guess the interesting point is some folks are going to jump in regardless. Others are going to pick up on that. And as you get more comfortable with some of your sellers, they know when you're going to take those natural pauses, and then that's kind of their inroads to comment.
Okay. And are the sellers on location while you're away, or is everybody virtual? I know now it's a different story, but previously.
Yeah, so previously I was, on site with sellers. Now everyone's remote, especially supporting, sellers on West Coast, East Coast, some in Europe.
Okay. So you don't sleep. You're lying to me.
Yeah, no sleep whatsoever.
Benny, my co-host who couldn't make it today, he also does the same thing where he has to support West Coast and East Coast, and he ends up getting meetings at like 5 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night. So yeah, kudos to you guys for actually being able to support so many account managers. Do you have other SEs around you that you work with, or is it just you basically in? Is this the room that you work in all the time?
Yeah, so there's 2 desks in here. I actually just purchased a house on Saturday, so
Congratulations.
we'll be upgrading the amount of space that I have to demo, which will be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. In Toronto, that's good job. That's all
Thank
I
you.
can say.
Appreciate that.
So all right, but how do you know when it's time to add more SEs to the team? Like, do you have a say in that? Can you influence that decision? And how do you know it's time?
Yeah, I think that every organization is unique in that some might require a more one-to-one relationship, like you were describing, for incredibly technical buyers or for those who have security and compliance requirements. Always good to have a dedicated resource, right, who's really a subject matter expert, can go deep on an account. But also, I think that there's a certain natural time within an organization when you realize that as you're scaling the amount of frontline sellers that are out, whether they're drumming up new business or whether they're supporting and expanding existing customers, it becomes not necessarily a necessity, but an individual who an AE or who an AM can rely on and can look to be that technical advisor as part of the sale. But it also, again, creates space within that deal and within that customer sell, to answer more of those technical questions, to be able to go, a mile wide and a mile deep on the product. And so, yeah, I think that it really depends on the industry, depends on the vertical. But as companies start to trip over themselves, or as AEs start leaning more heavily on the product or your engineering team to answer questions from prospects, then we maybe need to plug this hole, address this gap, and hire some resources that can walk the walk and talk the talk, but also support our sellers and still have that revenue generation mindset.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I would have thought like once you start losing business because there isn't anyone to answer, you would need to hire SEs, but you have a better answer. Like people tend to not lose deals because of that. They tend to go to engineering right away. But yeah, if they get overloaded with that. So you mentioned that you have account managers in West Coast, some account managers in Europe. I have one account manager that sometimes it becomes hard to build a relationship with. How do you build relationships with all of your account managers, especially if you're handling so many, when you can't see them face to face and they're all over the world? How have you went around that?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, strengthening that empathy muscle, which, personally I struggled with. It's always easy to get frustrated with resources that you don't have a personal relationship with. But taking a genuine interest, in the reps that you support or in the team that you support is vitally important, even more so for, I think, SEs than other roles within an organization, because you do have to interface with product. You are going to have conversations with engineering and design folks. You're going to be customer facing, but then you're also going to have sellers. So you're really this glue that holds a lot of pieces together. And I think that in order to build and forge those relationships, you really have to have the mindset that you're in it together. That you can't pick favorites and you can't lean in one direction or another. You really have to be a resource that folks look to and that they want to work alongside.
I disagree with you on one topic. I think you
Let's hear it.
can. I think you can pick favorites, and your favorites are those who know how to use you very well and then close the deals.
Right.
Right. If someone's like keeps bringing you in and never closing the deal, personally, I think I tend to like, and I'd rather go work on that project with somebody else. That's just me, I guess.
and you know what, that does happen. I mean, there's obviously folks that you gravitate towards more readily, people who have the same interests and the same likes. What I find is I love a challenge. I don't like to stray away from conflict. So if there is someone you butt heads with, who is an underperformer, you could always look at it as a positive, like maybe I can make this person better, and you're that spark. But
yeah, like I've done that in the past, but I feel personally, if there was an easy way and a hard way, I'm a lazy kind of person, so I will go for the easy way all the time. I do enjoy a challenge every once in a while, unless there's a choice for an easier way.
Yeah, of course. And there are reps that I've most definitely butted heads with throughout the years. I mean, there's folks that I would prefer to have not worked with in those scenarios. But at the end of the day, I think that top performers are sometimes going to mix like oil and water, and it's really you can take the higher ground and find a way to work together, or you can just both hurt the company and not work well. So I've been on both sides of that, I think.
Yeah. Funny, I'm talking like this. I actually haven't had an account manager that I butted heads with. Yeah. I've had account managers where I disagreed with and we worked it out. Like, you're doing this style, I would prefer if we do it this style. It's like, all right, let's try something out. But I've never butted heads with anybody. So not until they got promoted, but that's a different story.
Yeah, I definitely think that different styles work better or worse. Myself, I was never a fan of the on-camera selling or the pre-recorded videos. But you learn to adjust and you learn to adapt, and so I think that that's even just when we come back to what SEs are not. I don't picture us being help center video creators as like I don't want to create a custom video for every customer, right? I don't want to go in and showcase something without having a dialogue with a customer. And I think that really speaks to needing that customer communication, that discovery, rather than just recording a demo and shipping it out to prospects, basically.
Yeah. So a friend of mine, or someone I've interviewed on the podcast and I've had chats with them separately, his name is Sly Giffens, and he does YouTube videos where he takes this product. He probably got a question from one of his customers. He makes a generic video, not specifically for that customer, and he puts it on YouTube. And because of that, he got promoted so many times. He moved from SE to marketing and back to SE in a different company. So that's helped his career. But if you're gonna do it, like if a customer asks you a question and you just record a video and ship it to them, yeah, I'd rather go hands-on and like get on a WebEx or a Zoom,
Absolutely,
and chat with them. But then, if marketing would allow, I would like to make a video about that and post it on YouTube or something. But I haven't done that because I haven't had time.
Yeah.
So, do you something else we talked about is when you first became an SE, you were riding high, you were selling all these products, you had your market, and then your company tried to expand and remind me, like you went into the wrong market or something. Like remind me what happened there and
Sure,
why do you think?
yes. Yeah, we had pretty immediate success in the Canadian market for this particular industry solution. And then we just assumed naturally that this would work in the remainder of North America. So we tried to pursue the much larger US education market for this particular product, and quickly found that there was this swell of products that basically solved challenges far more robustly than our product offering was. And the pivot there was incredibly difficult. So although you filled the pipeline with leads, the conversion was zero because it was just impossible to break into that market, without having subject matter expertise. And it was interesting because you're selling to the very same persona that you were in Canada, but just the uniqueness of selling into a different market, geographically, really what was a difficult obstacle to overcome. So that was a really hard lesson to learn, but I'm glad that I learned it early in my career.
So, all right. So there were other competitors out there that I guess your company didn't know about.
Yeah, exactly. It was, a really small team at the time that was trying to build up this industry or this vertical solution, and we just didn't have the resources to do our due diligence to know whether or not it was going to be possible.
Okay.
We just assumed because we had 100% close rate in Canada, it was just going to be as easy in the US, and really didn't play out like that.
So you said that you learned your lesson. What is that lesson?
Yeah, so the lesson was, really that you need to understand the seller beyond the repeatable nature of having the same job title. I think that a lot of companies, especially, in the VC-backed SaaS space, they think that because something works in Toronto, that it's going to work in Austin, it's going to work in San Francisco, it's going to work in London. But until you do that due diligence and until you trust that your marketing teams and your founders have done that research, really tread lightly and sell to your market, but understand kind of the ideal customer profile and where those folks are located.
So if you were in that position today, well, how would you deal with it differently?
Yeah, I think that definitely I wouldn't have been as persistent to go after these opportunities. I can count hundreds of hours of demos that I did where you end up chasing your tail trying to solve a problem that we thought we understood, but really there was other solutions that solved it in a more holistic way.
Okay.
So my job as an SE, in that particular scenario, was just to deliver the product that we'd built. But we found more and more that they wanted to see referenceable case studies from customers who had taken a leap, with an early
Right.
stage startup, and that's really hard to do, I think. Especially when your offering is very targeted and very specific to solving a unique challenge that only really resonated with a specific market.
Okay. Yeah. So markets are not the same.
Markets are not
And
the same, and that's why no demo can be the same.
yeah.
Right? The challenges are going to be very, very different. So you can't assume that just because a solution works for one customer in one region, that's going to be replicated elsewhere.
That's a very good point. Okay. So we're gonna change gears right now.
Sure.
We've I've talked to people from New York who created SENY. I've talked to people from Boston who are part of SE Boz, but I've actually that was before they started it. And now there is SE Toronto.
Correct.
So can you briefly explain what in the world SE Toronto is?
Sure. So SE Toronto, much like SENY and SE Boston, is really a network for SEs to come together, to network, to share best practices, and really just to create a community for any SEs in the Greater Toronto area, even as far west as Kitchener-Waterloo, if anybody's listening, as well, just to kind of come together and share some challenges that we're all facing. We also have, a little bit of a unique spin, I think, compared to the other two chapters currently, where we're looking to bring in different groups, different agencies, different organizations that'll help round out the SE experience. So more to come on that.
Okay, awesome. And where can people find out more about SE Toronto?
Sure. So you can go to our LinkedIn page. you search for Sales Engineers of Toronto, and it should come up right away. We also have a Slack channel as well, and maybe we can link in the podcast if you want to join in, and then that way we can instant message as well.
Okay, so you will share that link with me. I will put it on show notes at show 112. And I'll put if you send me the LinkedIn page as well, I'll put it on the show notes as well.
That'd be great. Thanks.
So I've interviewed pretty much everybody from SE in NY except for Owen. Again, Owen, if you're listening. Well, last week's interview is with Guy Chow. So, yeah.
Awesome. I'll have to listen to that episode.
Yeah, it'll be out on Monday. All right. So, not so fire round. Have you heard of it? You haven't heard of it. Let's just move on. What is the one thing you love about sales engineering?
The thing that I love about sales engineering is that every day you have to solve a completely new challenge, and sometimes the same challenge, but it's never boring. I never feel like going into a customer engagement or talking to any of the sales team that I support that it's going to be a boring day, and that's what really gets me excited to show up day in, day out. I'm not doing the same work. I'm not talking to the same customer, and I just love it.
Okay, and show up in front of your computer, you mean? Because we're not
exactly.
Yeah. All right. What would you change about sales engineering, or at least about your role as a sales engineer?
Sure. So for myself, I have a passion for learning, and I think that the one thing that I wish that I could change is just more dedicated time to become a subject matter expert in other areas. I'm lucky enough that I've taken on kind of an interesting position within my organization where I'm going to try and become the analytics subject matter expert as it pertains to talent data. And so I just, I love the idea of diversifying your skill set, but applying what you've learned in other roles to new challenges, rather than kind of getting pigeonholed into an SE who knows something really deep and really well, but very specific. I like the opportunity to be like a jack of all trades and specialize as needed.
Okay. So that's what we call a generalist SE, which is what I am.
Yeah.
And so in my organization, there's generalist SEs, then there are specialist SEs that sit behind us, which is kind of like last week's episode was just about that. All right. Other than SE Toronto, is there a resource that you would recommend for sales engineering?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few resources that I lean on. I'm a big advocate for sales training. So there's some books and some content that I've really taken accustomed to. I love Challenger Sale. I love Great Demo by Peter Cohen. There's some just truly inspirational, I think, thought leaders in the space, and what we're trying to bring to SE Toronto as well is really some dedicated resources that maybe folks haven't seen yet. And so, just as a quick teaser to that, we're working with a group right now to improve the art of storytelling and storyline, because I think that that's really a vital part of the SE journey, is understanding how to tell a great story, without bearing the lead.
Nice. I look forward to seeing that. So let me know when that's
I
on.
absolutely will.
All right. Last thing, what differentiate great sales engineers from the mediocre or okay sales engineers?
Yes, that's an interesting topic. I think there's definitely great SEs who are just difficult to work with, and so I'd say that those are good SEs. They know the material, but they're incredibly difficult to book time with, or to get to do things a certain way, because they're a little bit stuck in their ways, or committed to a certain style. I think that a great SE is someone who's flexible, who's a good teammate, excellent communicator, and really understands the value of their solution or of their offering, and how that pertains to the customer's challenges that they're trying to solve.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I would also say if someone is a great SE but is hard to work with, is not a great SE. It's like an okay at best, because part of our job is to work with people.
Absolutely.
Where can people find out more about Matt Wright?
Definitely on LinkedIn. I like to be an active participant there. So happy to connect with anyone who's passionate about sales engineering, or really sales thought leadership in general. as well, would love to introduce you to the other two co-founders of SETO. So Josh and Jacob are also on there, and we're really trying to, three-legged stool, bring some topics that are important to the SE community to the forefront.
Nice. All right. I look forward to meeting those guys. I've never met some of them.
Yeah,
So,
we'll have to bring them all on at once. We'll do a panel.
Yeah, sure thing. Let's do that. All right, man. It was good talking to you, and I will see you soon, hopefully.
Yep, sounds like a plan. Thanks, Ramsey.
Take care. And this brings us to the end of the show. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks, Matt, for coming on. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I really enjoyed it because I've actually never worked with so many account managers at one time. Most of my equipment has been hardware-based that I sell software on top of. So it's not just SaaS. And it's interesting to see how SEs work differently. Like I do pre-sales, post-sales. Matt does sales, and there's a customer success team that does post-sales, or I guess customer enablement. So it's interesting to talk about these different aspects of our chosen career, chosen profession as sales engineers. I do have a favor to ask. If you guys haven't left a rating or review, please do so. If you're watching our YouTube videos and you're not liking it or subscribing, please like it, interact. It just lets people know that this is actually a good platform. We're providing valuable information. And check out the forums. So I guess that's more than just one favor. That's 3 actions for you. Please pick one, whichever one suits you the best. So, and I will see you guys next time. This is Ramsey signing off.